My cousin just kept bragging and bragging. "Ooh, I'm getting all the inheritance from Grandpa because he doesn't like you." Well, guys, there's a little secret he doesn't know. Grandpa's broke. Grandma is the rich one. Oh, and she loves me. Growing up as a half-caste has been one of the hardest things for me. I totally understood when kids at school would tease me for being half Indian in a world full of white people. But getting the same treatment at home was something I never understood. No matter how much my mom tried to lie and get me to believe that my grandpa loved me, as much as he loved my younger cousin, it was always obvious that she was lying. According to my mom, she met my father, who's Indian, in college. They fell in love with each other. My father's been living in the United States for years before he met my mom. His parents were immigrants, and my mom said that one of the things that really drew her close to my father was the different kind of love she got from him. They've been dating for almost 3 years now when Dad popped the question. Unfortunately, when it's time for my parents to make things official, my grandfather did not approve of their marriage. He insisted that he could not let my mom marry my father because he was Indian. He even told my dad to his face that he would rather prefer my mom remain single for the rest of her life than marry someone like him. My grandfather acted this way and said all this because he was a racist, a toxic one at that. My mother already knew how my granddad would react to the news of her wanting to marry my dad. So she told him that she did not care if he approved of their marriage or not, because she loved my father and would not marry anyone else except for him. When my granddad realized that he could not get my mom to change her opinion, he just kept nagging. He eventually kicked her out, and even threatened to disown her if she married my dad. But it was already too late because my mom was pregnant with me at the time. On the other hand, my grandma did not have issues with my mother marrying my dad. She was more open-minded, and she always treated my father with love whenever he visited them. At the end of my mom and grandfather going back and forth with each other, my mother married my dad without her father's approval, and this caused friction in their relationship up until I was born. I think when I was 3 years old, I remember that every time I tried to go close to my grandfather or play with him, he would squeeze his face in disgust and ignore me. Most times, he would even go as far as pushing me away, would yell at me until I cried, or he would do something mean. I remember asking, always, my mom why, quote, grandfather didn't like me, and she'd always come up with excuses for his actions, and it's still at the age of 3 that my aunt, Cecilia, my mom's younger sister, gave birth to my cousin. She was my mom's only sibling, and she wasn't too different from grandfather. She treated me the same and never carried me when I was a baby. Since I was still very young at that age, I didn't really understand what was going on and didn't know why my grandfather and aunt always made me feel different. I innocently bought all the excuses and lies my mother fed me, and most of the times I would blame myself for my grandfather's ill treatment towards me, because at one point, I believed it was me that always made him angry. So I grew up thinking that my grandfather would always be in a bad mood or just having a bad day, and the reason I never got to touch, got close to, or hold my baby cousin was because his mother thought I was too young to sit next to him. But in reality, it's because they're racist, and they simply didn't want anything to do with me. It doesn't matter how young I was. It was at age 6 that I really began to understand that my grandfather and aunt treated me like trash, because I was half Indian. It was also around this time that the bullying and teasing at school began. Kids would either laugh at my surname or tease me slightly because of my skin color. It wasn't like I had a thick Indian accent or anything. You see, my dad moved with his family when he was 3, so his English is really smooth. In addition to my slightly dark skin color, anyone who saw me could easily tell that I was half Indian. It was more like my father's Indian genes had suppressed my mother's. I was literally the black sheep in the midst of others, and this made it very fast for me to be a bully target as a child. If I'm being honest, I'd say that I didn't have any issues with the bullying and teases I got from school. I'd seen other kids who were white get teased and bullied just as much as me, so I didn't really think of it as ill treatment. Besides, as I grew older, the bullying and teases stopped as the other kids grew older and I was able to make very cool friends. But I could not say the same for my family. My grandfather and cousin, to be more precise. As I grew older, their hate and disgust towards me grew stronger. My cousin Mason grew up to be a total brat. Ugh. As a teenage boy, I'd heard some of my friends talk about the cool relationship that they had with their cousins, but I could relate to that because Mason hated me, and he made getting along with him very hard. It wasn't like we had any issues or we fought. It's because of the terrible things his mother and grandfather had been telling him about me. Right from when he was younger, we did not have that cousin-to-cousin relationship. It's either he was always laughing at me, using swear words, or humiliating me in one way or the other. I'll admit, there was a time I thought Mason would forget all the things that we grew up to see in our family, and so we could start to build our relationship, but boy was I mistaken. I ended up looking stupid and being humiliated. It even got to the point where we had to stop visiting my grandparents' house during the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, because my granddad made it so obvious that he didn't want me there. That Christmas, my mom got mad. We'd gone to my grandparents' house on Christmas Eve, and it's a full house because my cousin and his parents had come too. That evening, while we were all having dinner together, my grandfather started talking about Mason and how he was impressed with his grades that school year. Being a child at the time, I used the opportunity to tell my grandfather about my grades too. But he gave me an absolutely disgusted look, ignored me, and continued to brag about Mason's grades and how he was proud of him. The look on Mason's face showed that he enjoyed how my grandfather gave him all the attention. When my grandmom noticed what happened, she tried to cover up and ask about my grades, but it was too late. The damage had been dealt. At that moment, I didn't want my grandma to try to make me feel better out of pity. I was used to my grandma always being so nice to me, especially when my grandfather ignored me or made me feel less of myself. The following morning, which was meant to be the unwrapping of the Christmas gifts for me and my cousins, I realized that the only gift that had been left for me was for my grandmom, and my granddad, who did not get anything for me, purposely bought the latest toy set for Mason to spite me. By this time, I'd already knew that my grandfather did not like me as much as he liked Mason, so I did not make a big old fuss about the whole thing. In fact, I've had enough of him treating me that way, and I wanted my mom to take me home already. Now, the reason my mom got mad that Christmas Day was because my grandfather made a snide remark about me being Indian and how he would prefer me, to not be his grandchild. He said it was a joke while we were having dinner, but my mom knew it was not a joke. Hearing that really hurt my feelings, and when my mom saw the tears rolling down my cheeks and how my cousin and his parents were laughing, she stood up to my grandfather, and we ended up leaving my grandparents' house earlier than we expected. It took us years after the fallout between my grandfather and mom to start visiting my grandparents' house after that day. Because of the whole racist thing between me and my grandfather, Mason and I never got along. He had successfully been brainwashed by his mother and my granddad, and, he inherited the hate. To be more specific, it was almost like he was always trying to rub it in my face that he was my granddad's favorite kid, his only recognized grandchild. I know, it's kinda stupid, but as an only child who didn't have any other siblings, I believed that Mason and I would get along as adults, and, we would forget about our sour childhood memories. But then I realized that it's very difficult to take racism out of a racist by simply being good to him. Mason ended up growing up to be a very, toxic person. And of course, racist. Even worse than my grandfather. Funny enough, his racism did not just end with me, it escalated to the other people who looked different from him. About a year ago, I'd gone to my grandparents' house to drive my grandma to a place she wanted to go. And while I was waiting outside the house, I overheard Mason, talking to my granddad about how he mistreated an African American that he bumped into while he was shopping for groceries. He talked about the details and how he felt so fulfilled after doing it, and the two of them busted into laughter. Then my grandfather said something about people like African Americans being stubborn and refusing to learn the easy way. I was so disgusted at what I heard, but it made me realize that people like them could never love someone like me no matter how hard I tried to be nice to them. Despite being family, merely setting their eyes on me always made them angry, and I'm sure if my granddad had his way, he would have sent my dad and his family back to India so he could have the whole country to himself. The one thing I'm grateful for is that my parents raised to, love myself and my uniqueness regarding of what people like my grandfather and cousin thought about me, and that really helped in molding me into the man that I am today. Now, okay, let's get to the nitty-gritty, the main story. 9 months ago, my grandmother celebrated her 55th birthday. She made it compulsory for me to be there, and, prior to D-Day, I had been helping around the house and driving around to run errands for my grandmother. And all through this while, Mason was at home. Since I didn't have a good relationship with him, his mom and our grandfather, I have been avoiding them like the absolute plague. This is to say that we never spoke to each other, and I'd always turn in a different direction if I saw any of them coming my way because I did not want issues, especially with Mason. He just had a way of always making me angry with his words. While other preparations and the decoration of the house for the party were going on, Mason and I did not say a word to each other. We didn't even make eye contact or look at each other for more than a minute. I made sure I had my headphones blasting in my ears, so they could block out whatever they were saying about me. So I was kind of surprised when Mason came to sit next to me while the party was going on, and, it was my grandma's big day. At first I felt uncomfortable and I wanted to leave the seat for him, but after scanning the whole room and seeing that all the chairs and couches were occupied by different guests, I decided, maybe I should stay put and ignore him while focusing on my phone. Honestly, I wasn't focusing on my phone with Mason beside me. Deep down, I was wondering what he had come to brag about. It was making me very restless. Just as I was trying to calm, I figured out a game Mason was playing. He turned to me with a wide smile and said, "Granddad is willing all his inheritance to me, and I made sure he won't be leaving you a penny." Yeah, those were his exact words. Then he gave me an expression of satisfaction, the kind of expression you have on your face when you know that you've achieved a goal or done something you've always wanted to do. Sincerely, that was the last thing I expected to hear from him. Also, even without Mason coming to brag in my face, I did not need a psychic to tell me that my grandfather won't be willing me anything. That's pretty obvious from the way things have been going. After Mason had bragged about getting everything from our grandfather and him ensuring that I would not get a penny, I forced a smile and congratulated him. Then I returned to my phone screen expecting that he would go away, but he didn't. He called my attention again and said this, "Too bad. You're not going to get anything. Poor grandma, she doesn't have anything to give you. Oh, except for that old Birkin bag. It's due for the trash anyways." Then he walked away. I knew the handbag was, what he was referring to, and my grandma, she had this Birkin handbag that she claimed was so expensive, and she said something about it being a timeless piece. For the greater part of my childhood years, I remembered that my mom was always asking for that bag. But my grandma did not give it to her because it was still her favorite, and she claimed it could be resold for a very good price. So him bringing up the bag was him mocking me, and trying to say that my grandma did not have any other prized possessions apart from that bag that she was always talking about. After my cousin bragged and left, my mood changed and my grandma noticed it even when she had so many guests around her. After the party ended and all the guests had gone, she asked me why I looked so sad, and I told her everything my cousin had said without thinking twice. I expected that she would be mad, but instead she laughed and told me not to worry, that she had something for me. I didn't think much about what my grandma had, Sad until a couple of weeks later when she told me that she would be willing some things that she had to me since my granddad decided to be partial. Even after hearing that, I did not take it as a big deal until I made a, shocking discovery. For what it's worth, my grandma is a very calm and easygoing person, but my grandfather is more of a bragger and a spender. Growing up, my cousin and I refused to perceive my granddad as the rich one because of how he used to brag about his lifestyle, but recently, guys, I found out that my grandfather did not even have up to $50,000 of his own. Everything he willed to my cousin was barely $50,000. He was only supporting my grandma, who turned out to be the rich, successful one. The reason we didn't know this earlier was because my father took all the glory for all the things that were good, that were happening around them. He didn't even own the house they lived, and he did not contribute a dime to the purchase of it. When I knew that my grandma was rich and successful businesswoman, yet she was so calm and never attempted to show off, I was in absolute disbelief. The day she announced that she had written her will, my parents and my cousin's parents were all around. She had invited all of us to their house because she told us that she had an important announcement she wanted to make. When my cousin heard it, he started making fun of her old Birkin bag. He even laughed and did not mind if my grandma would hear him. We already knew that my grandma was dying, and it's one more reason we wanted to make her 55th birthday a big, memorable one. Unfortunately, my grandmother passed away 2 months ago and we buried her last week. A couple days later, her lawyer called all of us and informed us that he wanted to read the will. Normally, I know that Mason would not love to be a part of anything that concerns me, but because he wanted to mock me at the will reading, he came there to listen. Immediately, the lawyer starts reading the will and listing out all the things my grandma had given me and their worth. I could have sworn that I saw Mason's mouth drop in shock. At a point, he had to interrupt the lawyer to reconfirm if he was reading the will right. At the end of the will reading, I was worth almost $900,000, and Mason almost fainted when he heard that. My grandma did not do anything to him or his granddad, and the only person she willed something to was Mason's mother. And you know what it was? It was that old Birkin bag Mason mocked. Now that he'll, hear that will, my granddad is insisting that I split my inheritance with Mason since he is a recognized grandson. LOL. I've told them that's not going to happen even if it's in my dreams, and my granddad is threatening to fully disown my mom and cut ties with her if she does not convince me to do it. So my question to you guys is this. Am I the a-hole for insisting that I will not split my inheritance with my granddad and my cousin? I look forward to your comments and all your suggestions, of course. Update number 1. Hello, guys. Thank you for your comment and support. I knew I had to bring this here because I know 1,000 heads are better than one. So concerning the whole inheritance issue, my grandfather has been making life very difficult for my mom and me, and he's claiming that I must have bribed my grandma's lawyer to make changes to the will because it was absurd for my grandma to will everything to me, including the house that we lived in. Remember, guys, I mentioned in the main post that my grandma had announced to us that she's written her will because her health was deteriorating. But on that day, everybody seemed calm and no one said anything. My guess is that my aunt and grandfather were expecting that she would bring something of value to them, so they were disappointed when they did not get a thing. My grandfather must have thought that he would at least get the house that they actively lived in, even if she did not leave him any money, and when that did not happen, he got so mad. Even as I make this update, I'm still in shock that my grandma willed all those things to me. She gave me all her shares in her 2 businesses, and of course, even left a huge acres of land. My cousin has been crying like a baby for not treating my grandma better, and he's even more disappointed after finding out that grandfather has barely $50,000. Someone here commented that I ignore their drama and all, and that's what I've been doing. My parents and I are so happy with the way things turned out. My mom doesn't care if my granddad disowns her or not. She even told him to his face that life would be better without him. I recently learned that my grandfather and mom did not used to get along well. He did the same preferential crap with her and always preferred my Aunt Cecilia to my mom. That was one of the reasons my mom did not care about his opinion when she wanted to marry my dad. I know so well that if my granddad had inherited the house my mom and I were living in, he would have kicked us out. I know this because he hates us that much, and he isn't even hiding it anymore. He's tried to hide a part of it when my grandmother was alive, but now, it's so much worse. Anyways, I won't be doing that because I'm not evil. I'll let them live in the house, and I'll focus more on learning about my grandmother's companies. Most times I wish we were, one big rosy, happy family. But that's not going to happen, is it? I've accepted things the way they are, and I'm glad I have my parents to support me. Anyways, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your comments and suggestions. Update number 2. Hey, I'm making this update with so much anger in my heart. I know some of you commented that I should simply kick out my grandfather, aunt, and Mason out of the house, but I did not listen. I was only trying to be a compassionate family member and not treat them that they would, treat me. But guys, I was so foolish. I'd say, about a week ago now, I received a video from Mason on Facebook. We're not mutual friends, so he sent me a request, and the video was attached to the message, and it said, "Hey cousin, I thought you might want to see this." And then he added a little laughing emoji. The moment I saw his friend request and the message that was attached to it, I knew he was the one. When I opened the video, I saw that he was actually using a rake to scratch the floorboard of the house. The floorboard had just been replaced before my grandma's demise, so it was still good as new. As if that wasn't enough, my grandfather was tearing off wallpapers in anger, and he was aggressively cursing me and my mother in the video. It was as if they deliberately did the video so I could see the damage that they were doing to the house. My Aunt Cecilia, whom I did not expect to see doing such a thing, was making dents in the kitchen door with a big knife, and she was doing it with so much anger. I didn't even know how to react when I saw the video. The most annoying part of it all was that they did not even think about my grandma who spent so much money to get that house where it was. All they cared about was destroying it because it had been willed to me, and they even made the effort to make a video while doing it. In addition to all the damages they've done, my grandfather and aunt openly threatened to destroy me and destroy the house if I refused to split the inheritance with my cousin and also give my granddad a share of it. When I showed the video to my mom that evening, she was so enraged. She called my grandma's lawyer immediately. We didn't need to pretend like we didn't know what was going on because we did. To cut the long story short, they've been evicted from the house and the estimate of damage they did has been made. Personally, I just let this slide and fix it up, but my mom won't let that happen. Since she has had enough with her dad and sister messing with me, and they've been sued in court since they're insisting that they won't pay for the damages. Worse is, they're not even showing remorse for what they've done, and they're saying that since I'm now rich, I can easily destroy the house and build it from scratch, if I want to. At this point, guys, I'm angry. I've had enough of their mockery, and I'll make sure they pay for everything. Thank you guys for the support. I'll make another update soon. Please, bear with me. Final update. Hey guys, I cannot appreciate your help enough in the support I've received. You're all right. Most of the times we have to learn things the hard way, and I learned the hard way too. Maybe if I listened to you guys, it would not have gotten to this point. For the person who called me a weakling, I'd love to correct that. Just because I did not want things to escalate between my mom, dad, and, her sister, doesn't mean I'm a weakling. You all have no idea how much trouble that we've had with them in the past few months, especially with me refusing to split my inheritance. Anyways, the reason I made this update is that the court hearing was last week, and the court ruled in my favor. Even the judge was mad when he saw the picture of the damages that they all did inside of the house. Immediately, he had about the whole inheritance issue. He knew exactly what was going on. The estimate for the repairs and replacements of everything they broke was nearly $20,000, and they were ordered to fix and replace absolutely everything.
That was the first time I saw Mason look so remorseful. This time around, he knew that he's been defeated and there was nothing he could do about it. As it is now, they're all sharing a cheap motel because if they all can afford, none of our family members have agreed to take them in, and not after what they've done. I never believed that my granddad, who always acted all high and mighty, would stoop so low to beg my mom to reconsider. He even used his aging as an excuse for us to give in and give him the house back, but my mom's warned him to never call her back again or ever show up at that house. I feel bad about all this, I do. I know I'm a very soft-hearted person, but I think Mason, his mom, and his grandfather deserve all what's going on. Mason's dad also picked an impeccable timing to divorce my aunt. So right now, Cecilia's in a very miserable place, and honestly, I have no pity for her. Hopefully, she'll get something when she sells her inheritance. Anyways, thanks for the comments, suggestions, and well, I wouldn't have done it without you guys.
I mean, this was one of those family stories that have the wildest dynamics. I seriously could not understand for the life of me how somebody can be so outrageously racist to your own family. I mean, guys, the grandfather of today's story was so absurd. Thank goodness the grandmother was the one who had all the money. I want to know your thoughts about this story. I want to know what you think about OP and how he even went about handling it. I know this would be a very tough position to be in, and I want to know your thoughts on it. So do drop those comments down below, guys. If you're new to the channel, I want to welcome you. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate stories every day. So if you do want to be a part of these daily readings, all you have to do is subscribe. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. And remember, it's cool to be kind.